Okay, welcome everyone to this seminar today, where we have the pleasure of having Stephanie Lenti here with us, who's going to talk about students with optimistic outlooks. Do they really succeed? Confidence and aspirations in educational inequalities. And this is a project with, you have your two co-authors here with you, Tinde Lennart and Frida Rudolfi. So Stephanie is associate professor at SOFI at SU. Is the Swedish Institute for Social Research. And she's also affiliated to Institute for Future Studies, where she leads the project about inequalities in educational outcomes due to gender and immigrant backgrounds. Her work is an intersection between sociology and psychology, addressing inequalities in adolescents and young adults' well-being, and the importance of social context for positive development. A recent paper she has published is Down and Out, the role of household incomes in students' friendship formation in school classes. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Eva. It's always fun to hear how you get described by other people, but it was all true. I'm really happy to be here today. It's actually been quite a while since I've presented at Future Studies, so I'm a little bit nervous, but I'm sure it'll be fine. Today we're going to present key findings from our research project called Dreamers and Perfectionists. So today, rather than delving into the nitty-gritty of a specific manuscript, we're going to show you results from different manuscripts that we've prepared or are preparing in the project. So you get a bit of an overview. I think I know most people in the room, but for those of you who don't know, Tunda and Frida, as Eva said, are sitting over here. And Frida is mostly based at Umeå University, but Tunda and Frida are also based at SOFI at Stockholm University, and Future Studies, of course. There's affiliations everywhere. So today we're going to look at how students' expectations about their abilities and their opportunities for the future are related to their later school outcomes. So we want to know if these attitudes might play out differently between different student groups. So perhaps these attitudes are more beneficial for some students, and maybe they're even detrimental for other students. Theoretically, this is important because it ties together the psychological and the sociological literature on students' attitudes, together with the social stratification literature on educational inequalities. And practically, this is important because it helps us better understand how educational inequalities come about and maybe what can be done about them. So, sorry, I think you guys can see the screen here. I'm standing in the way. Oh, but look, there's another screen there, so you're fine. Okay. So, leading psychological and sociological theories argue that educational attitudes signaling optimistic outlooks are crucial resources for motivation. So it's argued that by multiple theories, that these attitudes are supposed to lead to success via behavioral engagement. So the idea is that students that believe they can, that there's options for them, are more likely to be willing to have a go, and they've got more likelihood of being resilient against stresses. And we know from prior research that boys tend to have more school-related confidence than girls. That's both general academic and subject-specific confidence. And they also have, now I'm talking on averages, and they also tend to have much lower stress levels than girls. And when we look at immigrant background students, we also know from prior research that immigrant background students tend to have higher educational aspirations than native students. But when we look at the educational achievement of these student groups, we see that boys on average tend to have lower grades than girls in most school subjects. They also have lower educational attainment in upper secondary school and tertiary education. We see that immigrant background students, on average, tend to have lower grades and lower performance. So I'm looking at Karina and Yana here. We know that these patterns are much more nuanced than this, but this is the general pattern that we see. So what's going on? Boys and immigrant backgrounds students, their achievement is not what we would expect given their psychological resources in terms of confidence and aspirations. And these inconsistencies between students' attitudes and their achievement is what's known as attitude achievement paradoxes. And in our project, we examine 3 paradoxes in the Swedish context. So in the project, we look at boys' confidence, so that's boys' confidence in relation to their performance, girls' stress, so girls' educational advantage despite higher levels of stress, and immigrant background youth's optimism. So these higher aspirations are given levels of performance compared to native students. So today, we only have time to focus, we're going to focus on boys' confidence and immigrant background students' optimism. We really like we're interested in all of these, but today we won't have time to talk about girls' stress, unfortunately. There can be another seminar. But the main overarching research question we want to answer is whether students with optimistic outlooks really do succeed. So to answer this question, we use the Swedish SILS, SILS for EU data, excuse me. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the data set, SILS is a survey-based study of high school students in 4 European countries. And with the Swedish data, we can link students' survey responses on their attitudes to register data on their educational outcomes. And we can also link it to register data on their demographic characteristics. So at wave 1 here, when students were in grade 8, they completed cognitive and verbal ability tests, and they also completed a survey about their attitudes about school, amongst other things. And at wave 1, we also have demographic information on students' background, so parental education and migration background, for example. Then about a year later, at wave 2, when students were in grade 9, about halfway through grade 9, they completed the survey again. And here we look at, today we're going to show you results based on students' attitudes and also their effort in grade 9. So this is the last year of compulsory education in Sweden. And then we have students' grades at their completion of grade 9. So both their subject-specific grades and also their total grades. So meritvärde, which we refer to as GPA in English. And then up until age 25, we have results or information, registered data information on students' educational outcomes. So their enrollments and their completed courses. So as you can see, we have a rich data set. It's also a large and nationally representative sample. So there's just over 5,000 students in this sample. And this is really beneficial because it allows us to confound for a range of confounding factors that aren't always available in sets. It's not perfect, and I'm sure we'll discuss that in the discussion section, but we can contribute in many ways. And here we're also able to look at heterogeneity between student groups. So the main predictors that we're interested in are students' aspirations, their confidence, and we'll also look a bit at their effort. So we'll go into more detailed definitions shortly, and really defining these things can also be a seminar in itself. But briefly, as when we talk about aspirations, we refer to students' desired level of educational achievement and their expected level of educational achievement. So what students what level of education students want to get and what they think they will get. And here, university or college education is categorized as having high educational aspirations. This isn't just us deciding this categorization, this is a standard categorization in the literature. Confidence, that refers to students' self-belief about their academic capabilities. So whether they believe they can get good grades in school and how well they're doing in different subjects. There's lots of different measures and definitions about confidence. If there's any psychologists in the room, don't shoot us. I'm a psychologist, but for the purpose of this presentation, we think that this is a sound definition of academic confidence for us. And our level of school effort, our measure of school effort is how much effort students put into their schoolwork. So given that aspirations, confidence, and effort are argued to lead to highest student achievement, we start by asking a simple question. Are these factors actually associated with students' grades in Sweden? And here we see the unadjusted associations between these factors and students' grades at the end of grade 9, so their meritvärde. And we see a clear positive gradient. Students with high educational aspirations, higher confidence, and that exert more effort in their schoolwork tend to achieve higher grades in grade 9. So for example, students with the highest confidence score get, on average, a GPA that is about 80 grade points higher than students with the lowest confidence score. Okay, so that was sort of like our starting point. Oh, and I should also mention that these associations that we found, we tested this also for maths, English, and Swedish grades, and we found sort of the exact same pattern, but to simplify today, we just show the results just here for GPA. But we find that aspirations, confidence, and school effort all positively correlated with subject-specific grades as well. Okay, so now let's look at our attitude achievement paradoxes. And we're going to start with boys' confidence. And we hope to answer these 3 questions. So where our starting point within this attitude achievement paradox is whether are boys more confident. We know, and there's lots of discussions about this, but we actually want to see what shows up in the data. So are boys more confident than girls in Sweden in their academic self-assessments? And we also wonder about the accuracy of students' self-beliefs. So we wonder if boys are also more overconfident than girls. And importantly, research question 2, if boys are more confident or if they are more overconfident, is that necessarily problematic? Maybe it's beneficial. So we're going to test if boys benefit less from their confidence than girls. And we're also going to look at if overconfidence is in some way impeding boys' achievement as well. And in all of this, we're going to look at what role effort might play in this. So we begin. How confident are boys and girls? So this is when they're in grade 9. And this figure shows that when asked how well are you doing in maths, English, and Swedish, a larger proportion of boys respond that they're doing very well in school. And that's signified by we've labeled that as high confidence. So that's in the blue rectangles here. We see for Swedish, it's actually a higher proportion of girls that respond that they're doing very well than boys. And when it comes to general academic confidence, when students are asked if they believe that they can get good grades in school, we actually see no gender difference in students' overall level of confidence. However, importantly, these results should be seen in relation to students' grades. So students, boys and girls, average grades are presented on the left-hand side in the brackets here. And here we see that self-confidence or confidence is, on average, stronger among boys than girls in maths and English, and it's on a similar level in general academic confidence. And that's despite them having lower or similar grades than girls. So if confidence is as important as theories say, we might expect boys to have higher grades according to their self-belief here, or their confidence. And this leads to our second research question. Do boys benefit less from confidence than girls? These figures show students' predicted grades at each level of confidence. Girls' grades are shown with the red lines and boys with the blue lines. So here we ran linear regressions with interactions between confidence and gender, and we control for parental education, excuse me, parental education, verbal and ability test scores in grade 8, and also students' age. And here we see a clear pattern, and similar to what we've seen before, that students with higher confidence, they tend to achieve higher grades, except now we're controlling for some background factors. And for maths, Swedish and general academic achievement, it looks like girls benefit more from their confidence than boys. However, the effects are only significant at the conventional 5% level for confidence in maths. So here we see for maths, girls benefit more than boys from their confidence. When it comes to Swedish and general confidence and achievement, the significant levels land between the 6 and the 10%. So here we can have a discussion about how much these cutoffs of 5% are important, because we see a very clear pattern, but for Swedish and general achievement, the gender gap doesn't reach conventional statistical significance levels. So, and for English, we see no gender, that the gender gap is parallel across the levels of confidence. So here boys and girls get sort of the same returns for their grades by each level of confidence. So overall, we find some but little evidence that boys benefit less from their confidence than girls. Yeah. No, this is Meritvärde. So teacher assigned grades. Yeah, that's a good point. Definitely. So these are Meritvärde, which is what we use in this presentation, is the teacher assigned grades. So motivational theories argue that confidence is such an important resource because it's supposed to energize students' effort. They're supposed to engage more if you believe in yourself more, is the idea. And at the same time, we wonder that if the way that students' effort plays out, that might differ between boys and girls, because girls tend to have better study management and self-regulatory skills than boys on average, and fewer behavioral problems. Girls also, on average, tend to internalize failures, or they internalize them, so their locus of control is inside, while that can be motivating for many girls. So it means that they might react to effort might play out differently for boys and girls. So we wonder about gender differences, both in boys and girls' level of effort and also in how their effort relates to their achievement. Here we measure effort with the statement, I put a great deal of effort into my schoolwork, and students replied on a 5-point scale ranging from strongly disagree to strongly agree. And here we see the proportion of students at each level of effort. And we see that a larger proportion of boys have low effort, where they strongly disagree, or reply neutrally to this statement. And we see that in the green and the orange rectangles. That's the low effort students. So despite boys' strong confidence, they tend to have lower effort than girls. And this is likely to impede their achievement. And we do find that any benefits that girls do have in the confidence and achievement association is accounted for by boys' low effort. And at the same time, we're also interested to see whether effort plays out differently for boys and girls. So these figures show students' predicted grades by their level of effort. So again, girls are shown with the red lines and boys with the blue lines. We control for the same background factors, so verbal and cognitive ability test scores, parental education and age in grade 8. And also here we're controlling for student self-confidence. And here we see firstly, we see that for girls, there's a clear positive association that between effort and grades, girls that exert more effort tend to get higher grades. But for boys, we see no association between their effort and their grades in maths and English, and barely an association in English. And importantly, this is conditional on their confidence, and we don't control for confidence. We do see a little benefit for boys from their effort, but once we account for their confidence, we see that it really flattens out. Okay, so we started this presentation today by asking the question whether students with optimistic outlooks really do succeed. So our answer, it's generally, yeah, they do. But with the caveat, not necessarily everyone in every domain. So there's nuances there. We've left that, it was quite difficult to summarize our results, we thought. But in a nutshell, we can say yes. And we think this is important because this is beyond students' baseline level of cognitive and verbal ability, and also beyond effects of their family background. However, we do see that there's heterogeneity between student groups. So, for example, we saw that overconfidence can be detrimental for boys. And we did see that among male immigrant background students that their aspirations might not be as effective. What next? As good researchers, we typical researchers, we could do. We want to do so much more, but there's just not enough time. We would really like to look more into other contributing mechanisms. So, of course, students' school-related values play an important role. So things like students' interests and how important they think school is also very important. And Tunda, actually, you do have a paper looking at the relation between students' their confidence and their interests and how that relates to their upper secondary school choices. But we'll have to save that for another seminar. Where to now? I guess also we're well aware that students have different frames of reference. So it's important, especially when we're talking about confidence, to consider who students are comparing themselves with. Is it students of their own gender, students in their class? So the frame of reference is really important, and we'd like to delve into that more. We have a great data set. It's one of the best that are available to look at these sorts of things. Having said that, of course, we want more data. We have information on students' attitudes at grade 9, and we're looking at their outcomes at age 25. So obviously, we don't know how their aspirations and their confidence change across time. So in an ideal world, we'd have information on important feedback processes, how students adapt to failures and successes that they experience along their educational pathway. But unfortunately, we can't look at that right now. While we're having our wish list here, we'd really like to look at labour market outcomes. We're focused on school or educational outcomes, but obviously when it comes to the labour market, there is group differences. So for example, males still have many advantages on the labour market. So despite what we see in educational outcomes, we would really like to see how much this plays out in the labour market. Like, does it matter how they go in school? We think so, but we don't know. And of course, the data is, in some ways, it's old right now. So the students, when they were in grade 9, that was in 2012, the strength of this is that we could follow students until they were 25 years old. However, we don't know from this data how it looks among students, the current high school students. And thanks to Yana and Karina and others in the project, there's a new cohort underway. So hopefully one day we'll be able to look at aspirations and confidence and also girl stress among contemporary high school students. But that is it from us. So thank you very much.